All right, we're going to start by talking about the way muscles make ATP. Right now, as you sit there not doing a whole lot, your muscles are using ATP that was aerobic respiration. That is, we're going to take oxygen and glucose to get ATP, water, and carbon dioxide. So, that works well. Now, you've got ATP that's stored in the cells, and you've got a red pigment in the muscles called myoglobin that stores oxygen. So that's moment-to-moment ATP. Now, if you get up right now and you just ran out of the room, dead sprint, people would be staring at you, running down the street. You're going to burn through that ATP and that oxygen in myoglobin in about 2, maybe 4 seconds. At which point you'll start seeing ATP that's made by a different system called the phosphagen system. The phosphagen system direct phosphorylation to make ATP. Direct phosphorylation means that we take a phosphate and we add it to an ADP to give us an ATP. ADP is adenosine diphosphate. So 2 phosphates, ATP, 3 phosphates. So in one part of this, we're going to use an enzyme called myokinase, and we're going to take a phosphate from one ADP and give it to another, so ATP. The other enzyme is called creatine excuse me. We get creatine phosphate, and we're going to take that phosphate from creatine phosphate and add it to an ADP. So that we get an ATP and creatine. The enzyme here is creatine kinase that catalyzes that reaction. Regardless, using direct phosphorylation here, we're going to get maybe another 10-15 seconds of you dead sprinting down. This buys us enough time for this glycogen lactic acid system or anaerobic glycolysis. It's called anaerobic fermentation. From this, we're just going to take glucose by itself, or glycogen, which if you'll remember is our storage molecule for glucose, and we're going to turn it into ATP in the absence of oxygen. From this, we only get 2 ATP, and we get lactic acid. This is going to buy you maybe another 45 seconds, which is enough time so that aerobic respiration kicks in. And now your ATP are being made through the big picture process. Now most of your ATP are made through aerobic respiration. Now your limiting factor for aerobic respiration is the oxygen. So when we have aerobic exercise, that means that it's relying on aerobic respiration. It's going to be long-term exercise. It's going to be more than a minute or so. These aerobic events need oxygen. It's there. For short things, so if you're doing something that only lasts a few seconds, well, then you're using these anaerobic methods, and your limiting factor is going to be different. Glycogen, glucose, the elements of the phosphagen system. We'll look at this shortly. All right, now let's move on. All right, so 3 types of muscle fibers. Slow oxidative fibers are red fibers. Fast glycolytic fibers are white fibers. Fast oxidative fibers are intermediate fibers. And here in this cross section of muscle, you can see the 3 different fiber types. Muscles will be a blend of the 3 fiber types, even though some of them will have more of one or another. Here's this nice chart that shows you the difference between the 3 types of muscle fibers. Your slow oxidative fibers are red fibers because they have lots of myoglobin in them. They rely mostly on aerobic respiration. They're slow twitch fibers, but they're very resistant to fatigue. The muscles that hold you upright, that run up and down the spine, postural muscles, are slow oxidative fibers for the most part. Think of these as endurance fibers. They're small, which means that they're recruited first. If you go back and you look at our video for multiple motor unit summation, in multiple motor unit summation, we recruit the smallest fibers first. These slow oxidative fibers are brought in first. On the other end of that spectrum, we have our fast glycolytic fibers. Fast glycolytic fibers are brought in last. They're fast switch fibers, but they're bigger fibers. They rely mostly on anaerobic glycolysis. These fast glycolytic fibers are high fatigue fibers. Short-term intense movements. Now, in between here is the fast oxidative fiber, and it's in between. It's intermediate on all the things. When we talk about muscles and exercise is anything that's designed to maintain or enhance your health. We typically divide this into two categories: endurance and resistance exercise. In endurance exercise, we get moderately weak but sustained activity. This is an aerobic activity. It lasts a long time, or at least longer than a minute, so that your cells are relying on aerobic respiration. In endurance exercise, the muscle fiber will adapt to the load you place on it. So you're requiring it to contract for a longer period of time. Oxygen is your limiting factor. In aerobic respiration, oxygen's the limiting factor. So what happens over time is that more capillaries grow around these muscle fibers. That brings more blood and more oxygen to the fibers so they can make more ATP. The muscle fibers there make more mitochondria to use that oxygen to make ATP. There's more myoglobin so that they store more oxygen to make more ATP. When you think about this endurance exercise, sort of our picture for an endurance athlete is Lance Armstrong. And even the cheating thing comes into play here because, just in case you're unaware, Lance Armstrong cheated, but he was injecting himself with a hormone called EPO, or erythropoietin, which causes you to make more red blood cells. For an endurance athlete, you're limited by how much oxygen the blood will carry, and more red blood cells means your blood carries more oxygen, so you win 7 Tour de France titles. More oxygen, more ATP, more winning. Rock on. All right. Endurance exercise is going to cause your muscles to be better suited in endurance. They adapt to that thing. Not only that, endurance exercise tends to make your overall metabolic activity more efficient. Your cells get better at their utilization of oxygen. Your resting heart rate slows down. There are lots of benefits to being an endurance athlete. But what you don't get is muscle hypertrophy. Your muscles aren't going to get gigantic. You're not like this. So if you think about this, Lance Armstrong was also using steroids, but he's not like a muscle-bound freak because he's doing endurance exercise, not resistance exercise. Resistance exercise is your muscles working against some force like gravity or less. You get really strong contractions, short-lived. The goal here is strength. This is an anaerobic event, right? You ever watch the Olympics doing the weightlifting? Like he lifts the thing up and he drops it on the ground. He doesn't have to hold it there forever. He just has to pick it up. But the short-lived event, so it's going to rely on aerobic methods of making heat. With this, you're going to make the muscles bigger. Now, it's important to remember that skeletal muscle fibers are amitotic. You're not getting more muscle cells. The muscle cells themselves are just getting bigger. They're making more myofilaments and myofibrils on the inside. Yes, there are more mitochondria there to make ATP, storing more glycogen, and those fast glycolytic fibers are getting bigger and they're getting better at their. With resistance exercise, you do get bigger cells, and some of those intermediate fibers may shift over in the fast glycolytic fibers. The problem that happens with resistance exercise is that if not done appropriately, you can imbalance the muscles. We have a condition called being muscle bound. It means that one muscle becomes so much stronger than the opposing muscle that the opposing muscle can't do that anymore. Or you lose a range of motion because of muscle mass or muscle strength. I think this guy is looking at his legs because he apparently skipped knee day. Fine to make fun of him. It's not like he's going to run after you and catch you. Muscles respond to the load you place on them, just like bones. But with muscle adheres to something called the overload principle. They're adapting to the demand. So you have to further overload them if you want more benefit. So if you want to run a marathon, which is like 26 freaking miles, then you have to train for this. When marathon runners train, they start with shorter distances and they let the muscle adapt to that distance. If you wanted to run a marathon today and you went out and you ran a mile, you just kick your butt. Then tomorrow you run a mile, and it kicks your butt. And you do this for like a week, and then finally, like a month later or whatever, you can run a mile and it's nothing. Like you've done it so often, like your muscles have adapted to that load. Second mile is going to kill you. So then you add that second mile on, and you just keep adding distance until you're up to 26 miles of the marathon, until your muscles have adapted to that load. You can run a mile a day every day for a year. That doesn't prepare you for the long run marathon because your muscles haven't adapted to the load. Now, if you do this too quickly, you can get overuse injuries. And so overuse injuries is going to wear away the articular cartilage. It's a radiograph of a football player's knee. He's 13 at this point, and the cartilage is being worn away on the tibia. Another thing we often talk about here with fatigue is fatigue, and fatigue is the physiological inability to contract a muscle. Even though your brain's still saying go, the muscle won't contract. I may demonstrate fatigue with this TENS unit a bit later. Um, Maybe not because it's going to hurt. The way we would do this in the frog is I would hook up electrodes to the nerve, and we just keep sending electrical impulses through there. And eventually what happens is that we're still sending electricity to the muscle, but the muscle won't contract. That's fatigue. The signal's still there, but the muscle can't contract. We used to think this was caused by lactic acid buildup, but now we know that what's causing it is an ion imbalance. Every muscle contraction is going to let sodium in and potassium out, and eventually you get some equilibrium there, and the cell's not excitable anymore. It's what doesn't want to contract. In addition to that, the muscles are creating heat, and that heat is going to influence the brain and how the brain works. The brain doesn't appreciate this. You get dehydration and ion imbalance and then that hyperthermia, and the brain may shut you down. This is not uncommon to see in marathons where runners collapse and they don't want to stop, but they're not getting up because the brain has shut them down. This is called the central governor theorem. Now, a question that often gets asked of me at this point is, what's the strongest muscle in your body? It's not your freaking tongue. The tongue's made up of 16 different muscles. None of them, by any means, is the strongest muscle in your body. That idea of the tongue being the strongest muscle in the body is based on someone thinking that you talk too much. If we think about strength as how much work is done over a lifetime, it's the heart. It's always beating. It does a lot of work. It's not even a skeletal muscle. If we measure strength pound for pound, that is, if we equalize for weight, then the uterus is the strongest muscle in the body. But are bigger and smaller, some muscles are more. We measure strength by the amount of force that's exerted on an object. The Masseter is capable of exerting a lot of force. This has nothing at all to do with the muscle and everything to do with the mechanical advantage of the jaw. Typically, when we talk about the strongest muscle, what we're talking about is how much force can be exerted on the attachment points of the muscle. In that case, in most people, it's the gluteus maximus. Big, and the arrangement of the fascicles gives it strength. For fascicle arrangement, we have some options. We have parallel. Those fascicles can be arranged in straight lines. That's not particularly strong. We have circular. That's even weaker. We'd see this around like the mouth or the eyes. And then we have what we see here in the gluteus muscle, where they all come down to a common point called the pinnate form. And that's easily the strongest conformation of fascicles. So gluteus maximus is typically considered to be the strongest muscle in your body. That's where we'll wrap up. Now, questions that you've got right now. When's the exam? What's the exam going to be like? The exam's forthcoming. I'm going to get it up as soon as I possibly can. Here's the thing. I'm not going to limit you on time very much here. Yes, there'll be a window of time where I'm going to give you some time, but I'm not going to tell you like this day from 2 to 4. It's going to be a much broader window than that. And that is because some of your classmates have tested positive for the current viral pandemic, and I don't know their health status. By no means do I want to stress any of you out by giving you time constraints. I know right now, if you're like me, you've got 6 kids running around demanding snacks or entertainment or something, and you don't have a lot of time. It's not realistic of me to tell you to be there at a certain time to do this. So I'll get it set up, and then you can do this on your own time so that you're not having to deal with whatever's going on your end. I appreciate your patience here. I'm learning this. I've recorded stuff for online lectures in the past, but I've never gone to this degree. The lecture videos will get better as we get out of muscles, talk about nerves, and as I learn my own software here. So again, I appreciate your patience. Just personal updates. Nobody here's tested positive, so we're testing as much as we can. And I hope you're doing the same. We'll get through this semester. Don't stress out. I'll get your grades up. Your lab exams will be diagrams, so look at those videos of like anatomage table and the models that I got before we could leave. But go back and look at oral summation, summation. If you comment that you've watched these videos in the comments, it's appreciated. But make sure that if your screen name has nothing to do with your actual name, that you at the very least tell me who you are, so that I know that you're going. Other announcements. The exam, like I said, will be on Blackboard, as will the lab exam. Get those up again, so you can start it there. You're welcome to use notes. Take your time. go back through stuff. Much more concerned with you learning this than I am about your grade. So if you're going back and you're rereading the notes in the middle of the exam to figure this out, that's cool. As long as you're not just attempting like Google the question or whatever. Go back, look at stuff again, what we've talked about. And we'll get through this. Let's see. Office hours. Office hours will be, I'll send you a link for a Zoom meeting. That'll probably be sometime over the weekend. So we'll do that. You can ask questions. And for those of you that don't make it, I'll record it and throw it up on YouTube as well. So answer all your questions. We'll do that sometime during the day over the weekend, and be able to hear kids screaming in the background here. In the meantime, take it easy. Don't stress out too much about this. I'll get your grades uploaded shortly. Early in the semester. Now's not the time to bail out. You're going to make it through. We're going to be fine. If you're taking classes in summer one, it looks like summer one's going to be all online as well. So just keep that in mind. So I will see you soon. Have a good evening.